job interview is one of the most anxiety-provoking situations most people can find themselves in, even when they go to plan. But what happens when you have your worst interview ever? Our guests share their worst interviews ever in the hope that you will take something from their mistakes to have a more successful interview outcome. Some of the stories are horrific and some are just downright embarrassing. Let's join our host, Kevin O'Reilly, the interview skills coach with over 25 years' experience in the fields of coaching and recruitment. Let's welcome our guests to the show.
Welcome to another episode of My Worst Job Interview Ever. With me, your host, Kevin O'Reilly, the interview skills coach. This show is for anyone who may have an interview or preparing for one in the future. Our guests have been there, done that, and are still doing it at the top levels of business. And they share with us their worst job interviews ever, so we can learn from their experiences. Some are unbelievable, and some are just downright embarrassing. Today we have on the show Stephen Potter, a Director of Operations from Mindwise. Stephen, you're very welcome, and I'm sure the listeners will be keen to hear all about your experiences in your journey and how you got to where you are today. But before we ask the question, Stephen, I would love for you to share with our listeners something very few people know about you.
Okay. I've been learning Korean for 20 years, but haven't got past chapter 1. I keep going back to chapter 1. My wife is from South Korea, and I know a few phrases and can pretend my way through the first back and forth of a phone conversation, but I need to apply myself a little bit more. I would like to learn it, but chapter 1 is my limit so far.
20 years is a long time to learn one thing, Stephen.
It is.
And only to get to chapter 1.
It is. Yeah.
Is it a really difficult language to learn?
No. It's very logical. It's very logical. I could phonetically read Korean. It really is quite accessible, and in terms of verb stems and the ending for verbs, and it's very interesting language. It's one of what's referred to as honorific languages. So if you're talking to someone who is older than you, for example, the words that you use in relation to that person would be different than if you're talking to a peer or someone younger. So there's like a certain level of respect built into the language. It's very interesting.
Sounds very interesting. If only we had that here in our English language.
Yeah.
I think we just try to use the same vocabulary, tone. Honorific. What a great word. That's something I've learned today.
Yeah.
Honorific. Thanks, Stephen. Okay, so let's take us through this journey of where you got to today. Okay, where did this all start, Stephen?
Oh, I've worked in the charitable sector for over 20 years. Going back to early 2000s, I was a theology student, and I was doing some part-time work in a homeless hostel in East Belfast. And then I progressed from that. At the time, I thought I was going to move into the ministry, but I ended up enjoying the work, really valuing the work. And when my studies finished, I went to a full-time opportunity to work in the area of homelessness. And over the past 20 years, I've worked for some quite large charities, and worked in the area of homelessness, addiction, mental health, learning disability, dementia, talking therapies. And now in my current role, I oversee a broad menu of different types of mental health service.
Wow. It sounds very, very challenging, but extremely rewarding.
Oh,
that type of work.
Yeah. You can immediately see the value of what you do and how it betters people's lives, and it's fantastic. It's thoroughly enjoyable. But over the years working in homelessness, the rewarding part of it could be the comedy. The people you meet are fantastic, so it's a lot of funny memories. Yeah.
Do you have much interaction with homeless people and people with mental health issues, or is it sort of, you're a director of operations? Do you direct the people who then go out?
As you move through levels of seniority, it takes you away a little bit from the front line, and it doesn't mean there's no interaction, there's no contact, but it becomes less the more senior your role becomes. It becomes maybe a bit more strategic and leading, and not just as one-to-one with clients as a more direct client-facing role would be. So I've had different roles over the years, from support worker and social worker and service manager and regional manager, head of ops, and now my current role. But the direction of travel takes you further and further away from that direct work with people, which I enjoy. I very much enjoyed, but I suppose it's just a consequence of how the career develops.
I think that's true for every career, isn't it?
Yeah, I
Sort of
think so.
higher you go up the levels, the further you go away from the people almost. At the outcome or the raw end of it, who
Yeah, like
receive.
if you're working, for example, in like residential services, whether it be homelessness or dementia or mental health, whatever that is, if you're there as a support worker, well, you're there, and you're part of your day is that constant interaction with people,
Mhm.
and just doing your best to support as best you can. But once you move in, even within a service, once you move into the management, you're in your office and you're looking at spreadsheets and you're on the phone, and it's the beginning of that journey away from it.
Yeah. Do you miss it? Do you miss the hands-on stuff?
I relish the moments where I have it in my own role. So it's not the fact that it doesn't exist at all. It's just not as constant a feature. So I don't miss it because I still have some of it. Um,
Yeah.
the but it's just, as I say, it's just how what the different rules require.
Yeah. And making an assumption, you've moved around a bit into different roles. There's been lots and lots of learning. I do understand as well you're a lifelong learner. You're currently completing an MBA. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. Part-time MBA. So I finished year one, looking forward to going into year two. Thoroughly enjoying it. A previous piece of study I did, it was in the School of Social Work, and it was applied social studies for strategy and leadership. And one of the really enjoyable parts was that they brought in a lot of guest speakers, people who headed up NISC or the probation service, or revised children's services in the Isle of Man, or a lot of CEOs from charities. But what I noted was the common denominator was that as they described their career paths, they had all supplemented their professional social work training with MBAs, and that was what prepared them to be equipped to take the lead roles in organizations. And I shared this observation just very conversationally with my CEO. And next thing, week or two later, out of the blue, she said, "I've been thinking, would you like to do that?" And absolutely, I'd like to do that. So yeah, that's at end of year one. So I'm doing my studies in Queen's University, and I am thoroughly impressed by the quality of the lectures, by the level of support given to students. It's a very diverse cohort of students. I think perhaps as much as half the cohort are international students from China, India,
Mm.
um, South America, and it just brings a real diversity to the conversation in the classroom. So the lectures are very good at giving you high quality lectures and high quality information, but also very good at facilitating learning within the class and getting these different perspectives to enrich the conversation. So yeah, thoroughly glad to be doing it.
And I think that's true of anything, that if you have diversity in place, you're
Hmm.
getting so many different viewpoints,
Yeah,
something that you potentially have not even thought about,
yeah,
or
yeah.
it's just one of those blind spots, and someone says, "Well, have you thought about this?" And you go, "Wow, no, I
Yeah,
have not."
just opens up a new window, new perspective on things. Yeah.
And that's it. And I think that's the benefit of having that diversity, not just in the learning environment, but in business environment as well, because it really throws different ideas from around the world into one pot, and the
Mhm. Yeah,
best then comes out, as opposed to one or two people having a thought process and they're going back and forward, and
yeah,
it's just narrow. In
yeah.
my
It
opinion, it's
becomes an
just
echo
narrow.
chamber. You
Yeah,
hear your own thoughts coming back to you.
absolutely.
You need that sort of difference of opinion, and moreover, workplaces and cultures need that sort of sense of psychological safety to be able to disagree or say something new or different without fear of any retribution or ridicule, and that's where you get the really good ideas coming forward.
Yeah, and I think that is becoming more understandable now, that the employees need that psychological safety.
Yes, yeah,
However, I don't think a lot of the organizations have caught up with the processes to make workplace psychologically safe?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction. It's that lovely term of, yes, you have psychological safety. Yes, you can disagree. But then they say, but do what I ask and do when I ask. So it's, I don't think they completely understand what that term means.
Yeah, it takes a certain level of trust, I think, and I think also we're moving into big like a time of big changes in the workplace with digitalization and digital transformation, and organizations that don't embrace this are destined to be redundant. That they're destined to be just you know what's the word, anachronistic, where they're just
Mm.
not of the moment, they're not of the time. But part of this, part of the digitalization of an organization, responsibility for decision making needs to be pushed out to the fringes, and there's a level of trust required to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But that's where the people who are digital natives are operating in the organization, and that's where the innovation starts to accelerate. So yeah.
I suppose there's that also that level of letting go of
Mhm.
control
Yeah.
and understanding that you do not know everything and you cannot control everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, you're right, absolutely. That there's that level of trust, but there's also that level of letting go
Yeah.
and trusting people to do what they've been paid to do. And I think that starts right at the very beginning of the process when they hire the right person,
Hmm.
and then they can trust that person as they go through. Now they might need a little bit more support. Some people, as you know, some people need more support than other people. But
Hmm.
if you can find someone who's willing to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it relates as well to the evolution of how we think about leadership as well.
Mm,
So if you go back a number of years, like popular theories would have been like great man theory, and it's this person who's destined to lead, and that's not for today.
yeah.
Um, like I personally am very fond of a particular group of theories of leadership. So authentic, servant, compassionate leadership, things that shape the environment where people can operate at their best. That's where I think people need to give their attention today.
And do you think you see a lot of that in your industry, or is there a little bit of a different swing towards
I,
other
th-
methods?
I think there. I think I can see wide variation in different organizations I've worked in. Where I currently work, there are some fantastic examples of leadership that achieve just that. And it's that sort of combination of investment in people and developing them and getting the best out of them. And I think of another organization, there was someone who was my immediate line manager, and there was a phrase that I sort of came to mind when I think of them, and it was kindness with candor. There was no doubt that she always had your best interest. She wanted you to develop, but there was no shying away from telling you when things weren't as they needed to be or what needed. Just kindness with candor. And I thought, I like it. I like it. That's something I'd like to sort of take on board.
Yeah, and I think you need that mix. You definitely need that mix. You can be very candid with someone, but kind in the way you
Yes.
deliver that. And I personally feel there's a lot people could learn about the delivery
Yeah.
of a negative or a not a positive message.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's
Because
being sensitive to how the message lands on someone, and that's in terms of their own temperament and how it might need to be adjusted, or the timing and being sensitive of what's going on in their life, and not that candor doesn't need to be constant or every day or at
yeah,
every moment. There's a bit of emotional intelligence required to get it to land correctly, I think.
I suppose knowing someone well enough, do you understand the tools
Yeah,
that you need to use to get that motivation or to have those conversations is very, very important as well. And that
yeah,
comes from a very different style of management. Someone who wants to understand their people, not
hmm,
so that they can manipulate their people, but so that they can get the best from their people.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's those soft skills, and when the importance of those soft skills are appreciated, that's when you can start to sort of support people to be at their best. So yeah.
Absolutely. Soft skills are so, so important. And I think they're looked past for the majority of the hard skills, the MBAs, the qualifications, the certifications, the experience. But
Mm,
when you, even with regards to interviews, when you look at exactly what people are looking for in interviews, it is those soft skills.
Yeah.
When you've got that far to an interview stage, they're now looking at you to see if you're a good cultural fit, because you clearly have the qualifications, you meet the criteria, you have the experience. That's why you're sitting at the interview. The next step is about selling yourself, which is really a challenge for some people, a
Yeah.
real challenge, because they don't have that self belief that they can talk about themselves and their achievements. And I think that's a real cultural issue we have here in Northern Ireland, that they find it really difficult talking about themselves. And regardless of who I speak to, any of my clients that come to me, I can make a living off one question alone. Tell me a little bit about yourself. It is
Yeah.
so difficult for people to share the good. It's so difficult. And I've got to a stage now where that's the first question that we look at, because once they can build from that, they absolutely bloom. It's
Yeah.
almost like they need permission.
I've a favorite related question that comes at it from a slightly different angle. And I was asked this once in an interview, and I just think it's a great question. So as a senior manager, there's quite a likelihood that you may get a complaint made about you. What's the most likely complaint we're going to get about you? I think it's brilliant. I think it's such a good question.
Well, go ahead, Stephen. Let's have that answer, please.
Oh no, it was immediately obvious for me. The I can see humor in most situations, and I'll say something that I think's hilarious that someone might think is wildly inappropriate. So yeah, that's my answer. Yeah.
Well, do you know what? Well, I don't think we'll poke that bear.
No,
We'll leave
no,
that
probably
one alone.
that's probably for the best. Yeah.
We'll leave that one well alone. I think if I was asked that question, I would say they might complain that I'm too nice. Whenever
Okay.
whenever I used to manage or in an organization, I used to kill people with kindness. But again, candid was still there.
Uh-huh.
So if a customer would have come in and they would have had a complaint about something, and it would have happened quite often because I worked in a retail environment, and they would have come in, I'd firstly let them finish talking. How can I help? Not what's the problem. It's how we initially address it. How can I help? And then they will tell you. And they would probably be very, very agitated and really annoyed, because in their world, it's a big deal.
Mhm.
So you have to appreciate that. It doesn't matter if it's something you think, wow, that's the tiniest issue there. There wasn't a lace in the box, or there wasn't and there should have been two of them, but there was one and a half of them. It's a tiny issue, but it's a huge issue to them, because they've had to then come back from their life doing what they're doing to come back and complain about this. They may have
Yeah.
needed it for that particular time and then couldn't use it. So when they come back, I always say, how can I help? And they will tell you quite aggressively on occasions, and I've had that quite aggressively. And then the very next thing I would always do is to thank them for bringing it to my attention, and say, thank you very much for bringing that to my attention, because I can do nothing about it if I didn't know, and I really appreciate you bringing it. The change immediately in the person is huge.
Yeah.
It's that breaking of their state of mind. So they're coming in expecting a fight, expecting the same level of aggression back, because that's what people expect.
Yeah.
But when you completely go 180 on them and you thank them for complaining, they actually don't know what to do. They get really confused really quickly.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
it's like it's like that old saying, like a soft word turns away wrath.
that's
The
it.
I remember going back to my student days. A friend, he was sort of describing an interview he'd had for, I think it was Tesco's he was working in, and the scenario question he was given was, customer comes and tells you there's something wrong with this bag of apples. What would you do? And he very seriously said, well, I'd look at them very closely and think, are they lying to me?
Oh. Wha- what benefit would it be to
I don't know.
delay?
I don't know. It was maybe his first ever interview or something, but
Do you
yeah,
know what? It's maybe a projection of what is going on in his own head. And I think
could
those
be.
questions actually do help organizations and companies understand what's going on in your head, because you do then project
Uh-huh.
what you would do.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, you're lifting the lid in the inner world. What's going on in there? Yeah, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'll just check and see if they're lying. Oh, okay. Okay.
Why would you do that? You know,
Why would you do that? Well,
exactly.
Stephen, that leads us absolutely beautifully on to why we're here today, and it's to talk about your worst job interview ever. I am
Okay.
so intrigued. I am really, really intrigued, and I know our listeners will take a lot away from this. So, Stephen,
Okay.
over to you now, okay? Tell our listeners what your worst job interview ever was.
Oh, I think I have to answer that with two separate interviews. One in which I thought I did quite well, but didn't get the job and was so thoroughly disappointed as a result. But the other was one where it was internal opportunity for promotion, and I was very happy doing the job I did. But equally, I wanted to explore, would I be a good fit for this next level, and would the people in the organization likewise think I was a good fit for this next level? And I don't know why, but my opening remark in the interview was, I'm not too fussed if I get this job or not. And the look that I got, and he said, what do you mean? And then I had to explain that. I thought, I've started this interview and I'm digging a hole from the very beginning. And actually, that was the interview where I was asked the question about, as a senior manager, you might get complaints made about you. But I ended up getting the job, but I had a bit of explaining to do. But there was that sense of, like, from the beginning, the very beginning of the interview, I've said something stupid. And you're thinking about that. You're thinking about what you've just said as the different questions are coming, and you're trying to rally yourself and get away from that very stupid comment that I made. The time I was really trying to just communicate, like, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. And I'm not applying for this because I'm unhappy. So I could have said it so much better, but what I said was just ridiculous.
And do you think that came out in that way because you were a little nervous, or because you
Probably.
actually did
But
want the
interviews
job?
are anxiety provoking. It's a very unnatural act. Do you know? I think until you have a shift in mindset where it's, I think when you have a shift in mindset where you're thinking it's a conversation, and the people who are interviewing you, it's in their interests to get the best conversation from you. So it's a conversation on a theme. And I think when you can make that mental shift where it's not an ultimate assessment of the value of your character, the value of your performance. It's just a conversation, and it's as much about you getting to know them as them getting to know you. Because in that interview, you might discover, actually, I'm not sure I want to fit in here. There could be equally indications where you think, I don't like this. But I think if you can think about it as a conversation where they want to get to know you, and you want to sort of help them get to know you, and what your experience has been and what you're able for, I think that's a very helpful shift. The uh, the so the worst ever interview was one where I thought I did reasonably well. I thought I was very qualified. I thought my experience was a really good fit, and didn't get it, and it was devastating to not get it. But it led to a rather chance conversation with someone, and I hadn't known him. We just got into conversation, and we got to talking, and had a long career in the private sector, a number of different industries, and was recruiting for quite senior roles. So in our conversation, he gave me a thought that is so simple, it's profound, and I found it really helpful, and I've passed this advice on to the people I've spoken with. And he said, essentially, there's only so many themes you can be asked a question on. You don't need to memorize every question that could possibly materialize, but there will be questions on themes. So it could be um, financial management, budget. It could be managing poor performance. How do you get the best out of a team? What can you describe your experience around strategy? And so there's themes, and if you unpick the themes and you can rehearse telling your own story, and the person who gave me the advice, as an epic tale, just rehearse your own story, be able to tell your own story. He says you can adapt your answer to whatever question you'll get on that theme. I remember hearing this and thinking, this sounds incredibly simple, but this is probably the most profoundly useful bit of advice I've had for interviews ever. And it was after the point in time where I had not got the job that I thought I was really well qualified for. I thought I should get. And I thought, you know what, this has sort of helped me pick myself up a little bit and allowed me to think about how to approach interviews in a different way. Um, it also means that as you find opportunities in work to be part of a new initiative or part of something that's also part of your future interview preparation, because you're having exposure to those different experiences. And it's not that you're, suddenly cramming to prepare for an interview. It's having exposure to these situations and be able to bring them to your remembrance and describe them in a suitable way is your preparation for an interview. And I just thought that's such good advice.
Absolutely. I love that. I absolutely love that. And it is almost identical advice that I give to my clients as well. With a little addition to that preparation stage.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're in a comfortable is the wrong word, even if you're in a job that you enjoy, you should still be taking notes upon what you're doing, what you're achieving, what you're learning every single day, week, month, and year.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you have that opportunity to go for an interview, it's not that you have to jog your memory. You just have to look it up because it's
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yeah.
But some of the examples that clients bring forward after a little bit of toing and froing, they're phenomenal. And again, around the themes that you're talking about, you're absolutely right. When you get to certain levels, they're just themes. And if you have examples that you can shoehorn into the conversation, do you know what? They don't even have to be successful examples. They just have to
No.
be examples
No. Yeah.
that show that you have that skill or experience.
Yeah.
But
What
it's
one
always the reflection.
Yeah, well, one of so I'm a social worker by background, and one of the sort of disciplines of social work is reflective practice, and that's you'll rarely get two situations that are completely identical, but being able to draw on situations that are similar and the lessons that you can draw from them prepares you to step into that new situation with the lessons that you've gained through experience. Um, but that approach of reflective practice
Mm.
as a manager, as a leader, and draw on those lessons, that's so the source of your information for preparation. Yeah, like exactly like you're saying.
Absolutely. And it sounds, the more we talk, Stephen, that you're a bit of a sponge for that. You're almost seeping that in from every direction. You're back at Queen's, you're doing an MBA, you're constantly learning from experiences you're having within your own job.
Yeah, yeah,
And we had been chatting off air, and you'd said that due to going on this MBA, Queen's actually flew you out to Mexico to a big conference.
yeah. So it was the 27th Leadership and Sustainability Week in a PADI University. So PADI University has three campuses in Mexico, and we were at the one in Mexico City. But it's a very well known and sort of quite prestigious sort of venue, and they were able to draw delegates to this international week from USA, Canada, um, the group from Queens, which involved myself and a number of students from India, and a long list of countries across South America. So the lectures on the subject of leadership and sustainability, and a lot of quite famous characters from Mexico. So one person was someone who a film had been made about them because of their efforts to weed corruption out of one part of the Mexican police force. So as I say, the lecture seminars, there was a play put on called 7 Years, which the play's been running for a number of years. But essentially, it's about the importance of business ethics and values, and keeping to your values. And the plot of the play is essentially there's a group of four people who have been running a business. There's been a level of corruption has sneaked in over years, and one of them's going to jail. And they're going to go to jail for 7 years, and they're trying to figure out who is going to take the rap here, and have a mediator facilitating the conversation. But the direction of the stage play in this is fantastic. So as the different tensions emerge in the relationships, you'll have the characters facing different directions on the stage, and it's the tensions in this interpersonal dynamic that's being unpacked in this. It's just so good. But in the end, the panic alleviates. No one's going to jail. The panic's over, but the damage is done to the relationships. And then there's like a reflection on the play afterwards, and just ask some questions about where did it go wrong, and essentially the answer is it went wrong when the first wrongdoing started to sneak in, and that was just the start of a slippery slope. And so essentially, it was the importance of being faithful in the small things, and not allowing things to grow and fester. I loved it, loved it.
Yeah, and I suppose it's back to what that little phrase that you use about being kind and candor,
Yeah,
using
yeah,
kindness and candor. I mean,
Yeah,
if that had been addressed initially at the very beginning, then
yeah,
it potentially wouldn't have went down that slippery slope.
yeah, yeah, very much so.
And sharing with us your experiences with regards to that interview that you had prepared really well for, thought you had all of the experience, and then you still didn't get it. That happens.
Oh yes,
That
that's the
happens.
reflection. It happens. You just have to dust yourself off.
Yeah. So with that said, if you were to go back and give yourself some advice with regards to that particular interview, knowing what you know now, what do you think you might say?
I think I would say that the interview, it's not an assessment of your value as a human being or anything else. It's a decision that's made in a moment, and there's a number of different factors that will be in the interviewer's mind in terms of making the right decision for that. You might not be privy to them all. So I think as long as you can leave that interview in good faith, knowing that you've done your best, and whether you get it or not, that's neither here nor there. You've done your best. Um, at the time, it was part of me making the decision to leave an organization that I'd had a long time in. And looking back, I still think that was the right decision.
Hmm.
Um, the but yeah, yeah, you form connections with people and you form connections to the organization. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do, but it's what I did.
Yeah, and if you hadn't have done that, and if you hadn't have endured that experience, you wouldn't be where you are today.
I'm very happy where I am today. I'm working with a fantastic group of people from whom I feel like I'm learning every day.
Yeah.
So
So
it's
so
works
so
out in the end.
so having those experiences essentially is part of the process.
Yes, yeah.
You may not be where you are today because if you had got that job, you may have stayed there.
Mm.
Or let's look at it a different way, because of what had happened and that experience of that situation, that changed something in you to look elsewhere. But what I did pick up on was that you were having a conversation with somebody else about that,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden they give you little pieces of real absolute gold advice.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah.
But again, you wouldn't have had that had
No,
you not had that
no,
experience.
no. Very, very serendipitous.
Indeed.
That like that's and as I say that idea is it's profound in its simplicity, but you need someone to say it to you to realize it. You go, oh, there's wisdom here. Yeah.
And you know that is very, very true. Sometimes we can't see it right in front of us. What's that phrase? We can't see the wood for the trees.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's literally that. I mean, you could be looking straight at something that you are looking for, and you can't see it. But when
Yes.
someone sort of stops you and said, "Stephen, have a look."
Well, the thought just occurs to me. I think that's the value of coaching, because you have someone that you can, bounce your ideas off. They can, help draw out from you whatever insights are there, and that offer you new perspectives that maybe allow you to look at things slightly differently. I think that's where the value of coaching comes in, and like that, as I say, profound in its simplicity, that conversation with the person. But that was essentially, it was just a very sort of, affable conversation. But it was coaching by nature of what it elicited in me.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And some people are coaches by default, and they
Mm.
tend to just fall into that. It's not like they are professionally trained. It's just sometimes they fall into it because they see the value, and that guy has passed on wisdom that you'll take
Oh
and
yeah,
pass on to somebody else and pass on
yeah,
to somebody else. And you're
yeah.
doing that right now for all of our listeners. You're passing on that wisdom. The wisdom of an interview is a two-way conversation. And
Mhm.
if you can reframe it in that thought process, it reduces the level of nerves that you potentially could have going in.
Yeah, and as you're describing that, the thought occurs to me. So I've worked in services that are highly regulated and subject to inspection and audit. And I remember the very first times where I was responsible for these services, having that sense of foreboding about the inspection. And it wasn't until I made the mental shift where, well, we're collaborating here with the inspector to try and find areas for improvement. So I want him to find things that need to be, or him or her to find things that need to be improved upon. And I think it's a similar mind shift for interviews, where if you can look at the interview panel in a similar way, where, as I mentioned previously, it's about that conversation where all you're trying to do is get the best out of someone, get their best performance in the interview. And it's not that sense of terrible judgment hanging over you for what might be a poor performance in an interview. For example, saying something like, "I'm not too fussed if I get this job or not." So,
Well, Stephen, listen, it worked out for you.
yeah,
maybe,
well, yeah,
maybe that's the advice I should be giving everybody. Just walk in and say, actually, I don't really want this job. I don't know why I'm here.
that's it. Just shoot from the hip and say whatever comes to mind. That's
But I
it.
think maybe what the interviewer panel, or at least what I would have, after being very confused at the opening, I would have thought, this guy is being completely honest and authentic. Would
Uh-huh.
I like someone like him working for me? Absolutely.
Yeah,
Because he's going to say, he or she's going to say exactly what's on their mind. They're an open book. They're not going to be saying one thing but meaning another. Then you have
yeah,
to translate that. What is it they're actually saying?
yeah, yeah.
And I think potentially that's where that worked in your favor. Now, I'm not suggesting that to be best practice across all
I don't
interviews.
think I'll ever do it again.
But I think in that particular time and interview, that has worked for you really, really well, to the point you got the job that you were after.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do love, some of the takeaways I really want for listeners to take away from this conversation today are that kindness with candor, that leading with your heart
Mm,
makes a huge difference.
yeah.
And make sure you start the interview properly, even though you got the job, but make sure you set that up properly. Almost rehearse what you're going to say going in. Get
Mhm.
rid of that unknown, so that when you walk in there, you're going, "Hello there, how you doing? Stephen Potter, Kevin O'Reilly." And then you can have that conversation. It shows a level of confidence, but also shows a level of preparation,
Mhm.
which interviewers really love, because they want someone who wants to be there.
Yes.
And they see that through the effort and
Yeah.
time and the sacrifice that you've put in to prepare for that interview. And yes, absolutely, interviewers and businesses do want the right person for the job, but sometimes the right person can't show themselves in their best light.
Mhm.
And it's because of that lack of confidence or self belief, or even a lack of preparation, which helps get that self belief and confidence.
Yeah.
And having what you did and reframing, and it sounds like you do this quite often. You look at a situation and reframe it so that you're taking that harshness or that anxiety inducing process out of it. An interview is just a conversation, it's a two-way conversation.
Yeah.
And you're there as much as they're there to see if this is a good fit for you.
Yes.
And that's so, so important. And once you come to terms with that, it's not a judgment, it's a conversation.
Yeah.
And you do have control to
Mhm.
an extent, of course, but you do have control over, do I really want this job? Do I really want to work for these people? And you only
Yeah.
come to that realization when you get in there and you listen to what they're saying or what they're actually not saying sometimes. That cultural fit, it's a two-way street.
Yeah. I think it takes, you know, like what could be viewed as the unnatural act of an interview
Yep.
to something that is just, it's that conversation. A much more humane way to think about it.
Absolutely. Stephen, thank you very much for today. I know our listeners have taken so much away from this, because I have some absolute gold there that they can use going forward within their interviews, and not just within their interviews, but in life, and using that reframing technique to remove quite a lot of anxiety around areas that they think, I can't do this, or it is very, very difficult. So thank you very much for today.
Oh, you're welcome. Enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it also, and I'm sure our listeners will have lots and lots of feedback to give as well. So look out for our next episode, where you will hear more stories and tales from behind the interview curtain. But until then, remember, everybody, that on the other side of a successful interview is the life you all deserve.
For more details about our guest, or if you would like to be a guest, go to www interviewskillscoach.co.uk/my-worst-interview-ever, or find us on Facebook or LinkedIn. And remember, on the other side of a successful interview is the life you deserve.